Howdy, my name is Landon Daly, and this is going to be my submission for my 311 honors project. I'm going to be doing post-implantation imaging of medical devices within living patients. So the scope of this project is going to be referring to specifically imaging of the medical devices post-implantation, that being after they've been placed inside of the patient's body. The goal of this is usually to get your position, condition, and performance of the implant over time in order to make sure that the device is functioning as intended, remains in the correct location, and doesn't cause any adverse effects to the patient. The device types that I'm going to be going over that are applicable are going to be orthopedic implants, such as just joint replacements, spinal implants, and bone fracture. Usually we'll use imaging to assess the alignment, stability, and potential wear or loosening of these devices. In cardiovascular devices, we're going to be talking about stents, pacemakers, artificial heart valves. Once again, going to be placement functionality and possible complications like migration and thrombosis. Within neural implants, going to be like deep brain stimulators or shunts. We're going to be imaging to ensure correct positioning and functionality. Once again, it's a little repetitive. For cosmetic and reconstructive implants, such as breast or tissue implants, we're going to be checking the integrity of these implants and then once again position. Other cases that are briefly mentioned but not really specified in the guidance documents are going to be interocular lenses, cochlear implants, and drug delivery systems, which each require their own imaging protocols. So kind of summarize it into a little table. For orthopedic implants, mainly going to focus on X-rays, CT, but MRI is applicable. For 3D cases, that's going to be our CT scans. For X-rays, it's going to be just bone implant interface. And then for any soft tissue assessment that needs to be done, MRI is going to be used. On the cardiovascular devices, fluoroscopy and X-ray during fluoroscopy and X-ray during placement and post-op. Echocardiography for heart function, CT and MRI for detailed imaging of long-term integration and function. So our CT and MRI are going to be our mainly applicable in this scenario. On neurological implants, MRI is preferred for superior soft tissue contrast, and then CT for bone when we're talking about skull-based neurological implants. And then also when MRI is contraindicated, as we'll talk about later. For cosmetic, MRI is going to be pretty king due to the soft tissue differentiation. And then for our cochlear implants and interocular lenses, it's going to be a little bit more specified. For cochlear implants, CT and MRI are going to be useful, but it can cause complications, as will be discussed later. And then for interocular lenses, it's just a special case. We usually use OCT, the optical coherence technology. And this is all brought from the clinical trial and imaging endpoint process standards by the FDA. So specific to MRI, the FDA has kind of outlined some things that you need to make sure are all right. Overall assessment of the magnetic effects kind of sums up the entirety of it. But this can cause device malfunction, heating analysis, RF-induced heating, and then vibration, electrical stimulation, and imaging artifacts. It's more particular to electronic and metallic devices, but we want to make sure that the MRR environment is not going to be a safety risk to the patient, and it's not going to directly cause any problems with the implant, that being any electrical interference through the stimulation. By quoting the slide, the risk of unintended electrical stimulation due to induced currents or RF pulse rectification. It can cause malfunctions within the device, and that is nothing we really want to deal with. And then image artifacts can be caused by these metallic devices, so it's good to be testing on some controls so we can figure out ways to mitigate that. And then that's going to be through the FDA's testing and labeling medical devices for safety in the magnetic resonance environment. Outside of the FDA, I found a really nice review paper that's got a lot of ASTM and ISO standards. I'm just going to pick a few of them, and that's going to be from Woods, the Standards for Medical Devices and MRI, Present and Future, from 2007. So notably, the ASTM F2052-6E1 is going to be for the magnetically induced displacement forces. F2119-01 is going to be for your imaging artifacts. F2182-02A is going to be for the RF-induced heating. F2213-06 is going to be measurement of the magnetically induced torque, similar to the magnetically induced displacement force, but specifically for torque. That's going to be very applicable in our orthopedic implants. ASTM F2503-05, related to marking medical devices and other items for MR safety and compatibility. This one's kind of just a more general standard. But then going away from the ASTM standards, we've got our ISO 14630. That one's kind of talking about more general requirements, standard for non-active surgical implants, like the orthopedic implants and all except for relatively the cochlear implants and the heart-based implants. So moving away from MRI, we got the X-ray, CT, fluoroscopy. I kind of bundled these due to the ionizing nature of them. We'll also talk about SPECT and PET, but that's later. FDA's interference between CT and electronic medical devices is a key component for when you're imaging a medical device. Whether or not the CT environment is going to cause any damage or malfunction on the device, and thus patient harm or risk. So what was specifically noted is the insulin pumps, cardiac implantable devices, neurostimulators, but it is also mentioned that the interference is completely avoided when the medical device is outside of the primary X-ray beam of the CT scanner, and that the probability of an adverse event is extremely low. One thing to note is further testing for a novel device is warranted, whether or not this will be a problem, and if so, the physician should be notified, and they can plan accordingly to try and avoid the primary X-ray beam on the device. So, outside of the FDA, but still kind of in the FDA. The FDA partnered with ICRP to make a few statements, just talking about patient dosing. We need justification that the procedure is judged to do more good than harm to the individual patient, and that the dose optimization is up to date. I'm just going to quote this. Medical imaging examinations should use techniques that are adjusted to administer the lowest radiation dose that yields the image quality adequate for diagnosis or intervention. With all ionizing radiation, patient dose is going to be pivotal in your imaging testing plan, so make sure we can minimize that. Citation for that is going to be ICRP 2007, publication 105, and then ICRP 37.6. But just a couple FDA statements that they brought in. So FDA doesn't really have many specific guidance for PET and SPECT utilization for specific medical devices, though they do have a lot of documentation on the radiopharmaceutical development and usage. So similar to the CT bit, for novel devices, make sure that you know that the degradation isn't going to cause any problems or severe imaging artifacts with your medical device before you conduct or release these medical devices. But for more details, see the Developing Medical Imaging Drug and Biological Products, Part 1. Safety assessments. So that will be specific radionuclides relevant to the system you will be imaging. So outside of the FDA, there's a little bit more. I found a really nice article overviewing the dental implants' influence on PET interpretation. A lot of the times with PET or SPECT, we're going to be using dual modal imaging techniques, usually combining it with CT, so you'll have some anatomical and functional data. The question of the study by Namias et al. From 2018 is going to be trying to figure out a framework for testing PET alongside CT, with the focus on reduction algorithms in CT scanning having an effect on PET. They found that it doesn't really compromise the PET imaging quantification, though it is good to note and good tests to be run for a specific device. So in this case, it was dental implants, but it provides a methodological model for assessing artifact reduction techniques in medical imaging of implanted devices in general. Thus, this is going to be acceptable for any other medical device and much recommended. On the clinical side, it's, like I said, focused on dental implants, but it's applicable to other medical devices. On the technical side, it's just offers some insights into the technical challenges and solutions for imaging with metallic medical devices specifically. Seems like metals are going to be the main problem with all of these imaging modalities. But yeah, that's Namias et al. Does reducing CT artifacts from dental implants influence the PET interpretation of PET/CT studies of oral cancer and head or neck cancer? And I believe that is all. It's a pretty barren field for the specifics of having medical devices within the body, but any imaging guidelines are going to be applicable, as usually it's patient health that is the issue. But for medical devices specifically, it's more focused on how is the medical device affected. So definitely be testing if you're the one creating your novel device, and if you're a physician, contact the medical device manufacturer to see if they have done that testing and see if it will pose any harm to your patient. Thank you. Attributions, I used a template from SidesGo, and that includes icons from FlatIcon and FreePic. Thank you.